Hey, what's up everybody? It's Dean, back to Sear Performance. I wanted to show everybody what's going on. We've been kind of crazy lately, but finally we got Lynn's big block back. Needed a lot of work. A lot of things were done wrong from the other engine builder, but it's all been taken care of now. So we'll be able to get that back in the car and going, finish up the front end, finish up all the wiring, the fuel system, everything else. But we've had a lot going on. We got another bay next door to that bay, and I was contacted by a customer, Jason, who bought like 86, 87 C10, and it had a little 4.3 V6. I guess it was like a father-son project that was kind of abandoned at some point. So he picked that truck up, and then he picked up this Yukon XL, which is like a 2005. That's what's on the sticker there. And he had brought it in. He wanted to pull the motor out of the C10 and put the 5.3 from the Yukon in there. So we've got, walking back and forth here, we got the motor out of the Yukon. We got the motor, the transmission, the harness, tack module, pedal. Took everything out that we're gonna use, and then I'll keep this around in case he decides to go with a newer transmission. We'll be reusing the transmission lines that came out of the Yukon, and probably throw the transmission cooler in the C10 to go along with it. But I got the 5.3 sitting over here. Started getting it all cleaned up for the most part, and we got the dirty dingo. No, sorry, those are the ICT billet LS adapter plates, and kind of lucked out with this one. With it, well, you know, the way I do it anyways is I left the transmission in on the cross member so that the forward rear position of the transmission stays in its stock location. This way I don't have to mess with any of the shift linkage, drive shaft, any of that stuff. But it worked out pretty good that the stock frame mounts, which are weird on these, that one's kind of a clamshell and the other one's sort of that urethane style bushing that normally you see on the motors. But it worked out to where we can keep those. On this side I put a new like energy suspension. This guy here, 3.114G engine mount for like an early style motor mount for a Chevy. So I put that one on the ICT plate. It's a little bit narrower on the tabs. So what I normally do with these is I'll set it in there and I'll measure from this tab to the clamshell on the frame, and I'll machine like an aluminum spacer to where the bolt goes through the clamshell, then through the aluminum spacer, then through the two tabs on the motor mount and back out the clamshell, just to make up that difference. But we got, I mean, this thing was filthy dirty when it first come out, like most LS's are, and I got it pretty well cleaned up. It'll go through a couple more things. He's just deciding now if he wants to keep, which is sort of a strange combination, that it had a 4.3 with a turbo 400 behind it. So he's kind of debating on keeping the turbo 400 or going with a newer, like a 4L60 or a 4L80. The one that came out of the Yukon is over there. It has like the shell. I think the shell inside, you know, they changed to a B shell and all this stuff. I think that shell has broken at the bottom where the splines are, because it has no reverse whatsoever, and you can hear it rattling around and clanking. But it has forward. So yeah, I'm not a transmission guy. I don't like those transmissions all that much. I mean, it would be fine probably in this truck, but I'd rather have them do a 4L80. It's a bigger, beefier transmission. Just they're better all around transmissions. I got the fuel tank out, and we're gonna keep the stock pickup. And instead of doing an in-tank pump on this one, because the sending unit attaches to the feed line, instead of having to go through all that, we opted to just do like a frame-mounted pump. And I have the compression fittings coming that I'll put on there, and I'll change all the fuel. I have all the fuel lines off, but I'm going to use the Teflon -6 to go up to the motor for a feed and return. Over there was all the brake lines and or fuel lines, sorry, all the fuel lines, and they were in pretty bad shape. There's a couple of them, like you can see right here. This was the return, and it actually it's blown out. It's so rotted and old, so that wouldn't have been good. And then there's not really any good clamps on a lot of the lines. On one end they didn't have any clamps on them, which was weird. And then like this one's pretty rotted away right here. So I just opted to take them out and change them. Got all the exhaust that was on the truck, probably stock style exhaust with the nice blown out open muffler. So all that's gone, and then I keep the Yukon's exhaust, and what I'll do is I'll cut that muffler out, and I have the crossovers over there sitting right there on the floor. So I'll put that back on the motor. Once the motor's in, I'll put the manifolds on, I'll put that back on the motor, and then I'll reattach, you know, from here. I'll cut that section out. I have a different muffler, a 2.5 in, 2.5 out muffler, and then I'll reuse those, the over the axle and kind of out diagonal pipe. I'll use those, and he kind of opted to just kind of come down, kind of like the stock one was, come down, and then he just wants to turn out in front of the tire here, which is fine by me. I kept the Yukon radiator. This is the radiator, that's the condenser. I kept all that, the overflow jug, the intake, I kept all of that. Shroud, fan. So as much of that part, I already measured up the radiator and everything. The radiator will actually fit really good in here, and it almost lines up with a couple of stock bolt holes that are already in the core support. So if I can get that to line up, that would be a sweet deal. But then we'll try and use the shroud and everything, and I'll put the AC condenser. We're not doing the AC right now, but being that, you know, the truck's all apart and everything, I'll pull the grill off and I'll put the AC condenser in there. That way it's done, and then I'll you know, he'll just have to come back or whatever at some point and have the lines made up from the condenser to the accumulator, and from the compressor to the accumulator and all that. It's not very hard to make those lines up, and we do them. So that's kind of what we got going on. So yeah, that's pretty much it for what we got going on right now. I'll keep updating on the C10. I'll do some more on the 33. I'll break them up a little bit, but I'm gonna start kind of doing a playlist of the C10, and I'll add in the pictures and stuff. So we appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, leave a comment. We appreciate it. Have a good one.